All right, the next
Is yourself.
is myself. So what was I like?
Well,
Wasn't with Evan the only one in the hospital where you were in a ward too? If you when you were in a room with like 3 other people. Yeah, you didn't like that.
yeah.
With him, you were in with another lady.
And then they moved.
You were in a double. Okay.
Well, my pregnancy was kind of odd. We had lost 3 babies in between you and Evan. And so I was very nervous about this pregnancy, unsure. And I was so happy the day you moved. And as long as I felt you moving, I knew you were okay. And then, but because we weren't confident that everything would go well, when you were born, after you were born, Dad had to come home and wash all the baby clothes and everything because I hadn't done any of it. I didn't want to jinx it. So, you were born and you had some issues but they were all resolved.
You were jaundiced.
You were jaundiced. And doctors came from Children's because I had spherocytosis, thinking it was related, you might have that, which you did. They didn't know that for sure at the time, though. And you were 15 days late. You were due June 1st. And May 24th, my water broke. Well, it started leaking. So I went and I was having mild cramping. And went to the doctor and he said, well, you know, you're probably going to deliver today or tonight or tomorrow, but go on home because, you know, you're in the early stages. Well, on June 15th, they induced me. And it went so fast that they didn't have time to give me anesthetic or anything. I kept insisting that you were coming, and Dad kept telling me to calm down. It was just my nerves. And finally, I must have yelled at him to get a nurse, you know. And he kept saying, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. The doctor said it'd be about an hour. I said, I don't care what the doctor said. So anyway, the nurse came in, and she came in with that kind of patronizing attitude until she looked and saw your head was drowning. So they got me in, and I delivered you. You didn't scream like Ted, but you cried more like Evan, but more, you know. And we didn't know what to name you because we didn't have a name, and Ted thought at that stage that he should be naming you. And he wanted to name a baby Pete Rose Reniker. And so we had a couple names. Peter was a nice name. And so as soon as you were born and I saw your face, I said to Dad, I think that's our Peter. So you became Peter. And then a year later, when I was pregnant with Rachel, Ted wanted to name her George Foster Reniker. And I said, your naming days are over, buddy. But we came home, and you were a chunky baby. You were big. 5 months, you were 18 pounds. But as soon as you started moving, you got skinny as a rail. You and Evan were both in Slims. Ted was in Huskies. Everybody thought you were just so cute. A man down the street that we didn't socialize with or anything took a picture of you because you were so attractive in black and white and gave it to us. Just had a perfect little face. Anyway, you quickly became a handful. Part of it was sugar. You don't react real at that age. You weren't processing the sugar right or something. Because when you were 2, we went on the Feingold diet, which was no sugar, and really made a difference in your behavior. In fact, the next spring when we went out, everybody on the street said, "Where'd you get this kid that looks just like Peter?" Because your behavior was so different off the sugar. But really there wasn't, you were, quote, hyperactive, but I mean, I already had 2 boys and they don't just sit and play with something. So it wasn't until you got in the 2nd grade and you got pneumonia, and so I was working on your homework with you at home while you were sick, and there were all kinds of things that you couldn't do. Like you couldn't, if you had a task to write this sentence and they'd give you the sentence and you were just supposed to copy it, you couldn't remember the words from here to here. I mean, just things like that. And that time I spent with you, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. So we sent you to the reading van and all this and that, and we just didn't know what to do with you, I mean, we knew something wasn't right. And then a teacher in the reading van gave me a paper on ADD with hyperactivity and said, "Read this." And I took it home and I read it, and it was like it was describing you. And I came back and I said, "Why did nobody ever mention this to me? And why haven't I heard about it?" She said, "Well, the Oak Hills policy," and they provided all the support services to all the schools, is that a child has to have every single one of them manifested at school before they're allowed to mention it to parents. Because it's a political thing. Because then they're required to provide the services for you if you have a learning disability. So the doctor, the pediatrician, referred you to Children's Hospital, Center for Developmental Disabilities, and we went through that long process. And they identified the things that you were struggling with. Short-term memory disability, tactile defensiveness. They would, if they put you, what that just means is you had a much bigger personal space. So if they cram you in a line of kids, you're going to step out because people are much closer to you than they actually are, and you couldn't tolerate it, So you were always in trouble, 1st and 2nd grade, 3rd grade. You got real depressed, you'd cry at night, say, "Why are you the dumbest kid in the class?" We knew you weren't dumb. Your vocabulary was out of this world. So it was just, so we decided, really based on, after we went through months and months of evaluation, got the results, I went to Patrick Ann, the principal at St. Dominic's, and said, "Now these are the things that he's got, that there are techniques for dealing with," and she just dismissed it and said, "He's just a bad boy." And you just couldn't deal with him, So we pulled you out and put you in at Delhi, and the teachers couldn't have been better. They wanted to learn what these things were and how they could help, and they worked with us. And I mean, it really was your salvation that we put you in a different school.
We didn't pull them out in the middle of the year, right?
No, we waited to the end of the year.
Because there's Ted's 8th grade. Yeah.
We took everybody out. Just because, if that's how they treat a child with special needs, didn't want my other children learning that's how you deal with people who are different, So I told the pastor that we were looking for a school where our children could be educated in a Christian environment.
And I assume he was pleased with that.
He said, I have another beer.
So, as I grew up, what was I like after I moved over to the Delhi School District?
Well, you were always a good child. It's just you couldn't control your activity level, you know. I mean, the scariest thing to me was the time you climbed up on the top of the roof. And what Ted or Evan came, Mom, Pete's up on the roof. Oh my God. I went outside, you were about 6. I went outside and here you climbed up the wood pile onto the garage roof. From there, somehow you got up to the top roof. And I was afraid to yell at you for fear it would startle you, so I very nicely talked you down, and then I felt like killing you.
I remember that.
Who was the teacher at Delshire that became kind of like his mentor?
Mrs. South?
Mrs. South,
South,
that
yeah.
first year,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, she was all the years.
No, it was Mrs. Kruger, 4th grade, and then Mrs. South, 5th and 6th.
Oh, I thought you hit her every year. Yeah. You'd go see her before you left school every day to make sure you had your assignments written down and you had all the books to do all the work.
We saw her a few months ago, and she wanted to know right away how you were.
Yeah.
When did we see her away?
No, we saw her, we were sitting out, waiting for a table at that Mexican place downtown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And she was going to the Aronoff for a
That's right.
lecture or something, and Rachel was with us, Rachel and Dave, and she said, "There's Mrs. South." She was a wonderful woman.
As I got into high school and older, how was I? Growing up, getting older.
You were. The thing I liked was I felt like you could talk to me about anything. And you often talk to me about things that most boys wouldn't talk to their mothers about. I remember one time telling Dad something and he said, "He told you that?" So I never worried a whole lot about you. I mean, you were hesitant about dangerous situations, so I didn't think you were going to be getting yourself into trouble, you know.
What you saying is you were a wuss. We never worried about you
No, I'm
doing
not.
things too dangerously.
I'd rather they were cautious around dangerous things.
He was a wuss.
You're the only one who understood fear about weather like I have.
Then he got into wrestling and
So then I got into then I went away to college. And how many schools did you take me to look at?
none. You didn't want to go to AM either. You said you wanted to go to Dayton. So for you and Evan, we sent in one application. Dayton. That was it. Yeah, and I couldn't understand that. For that day and age, because I mean everybody went there.
Well, I sure couldn't understand it.
Of course, when we were picking colleges, we didn't think of looking at different places either. It was like, this is where you want to go. That was it. End of discussion.
What about when I was growing up,
Yes.
some of the encounters I had with Rachel at the house?
You were afraid to be upstairs by yourself. So we'd tell you to go upstairs and take a bath, but you wouldn't go up by yourself. So Rachel always had to go up and
Sit on
sit up
the
there
step.
with you. And except you would keep getting out of the bathtub and running out to make sure she was still sitting on the steps. And sometimes she would like stomp her feet like she was going down the steps, and you'd come running out, Rachel, 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 and she'd be sitting there laughing because she tricked you.
And you two coming home from school, what you argued about every darn day, I have no clue. But she would lock you out. I mean, there were all kinds of things that would happen. One day I happened, for some reason, I wasn't at work, I happened to be home. And I'm in my bedroom. And go ahead. I'm in my bedroom, and I hear the garage door go up. So I knew you were home. And I hear you kicking her bedroom door and cursing. I didn't even know you knew those words. And on and on and on, and I just went and stood at my bedroom door and looked down the hall like this until you noticed me. And the look on your face said it all.
Well, yeah, right. Rachel certainly had it coming.
She probably did.
What's so funny, Dad?
We're being asked to tell some funny stories about one of our sons. And the first one I'll tell is funny, and the second one I don't know, certainly wasn't funny at the time. But when he was being, Peter this is, when he was being tested for ADD, one of the days we had to take him up to the hospital, and they were going to do some kind of an interview. And they told us that we could go in an adjoining room, and there was a one-way window, so we could watch and listen to this interview. And so, what was he, a third grader then?
Mm-hmm.
Third grader. And this nurse came in, or whatever, doctor, young lady, and she introduced herself and said she wanted to ask some questions, and so I don't know if she asked one or two questions, and you gave some answers, and then she asked a question about
Yellow. Use the word yellow in a sentence.
use the word yellow in a sentence. And you said, I drove my yellow Lamborghini to the store or something. And she said, oh my goodness, she was writing these answers down. She says, I'm not even sure I know how to spell Lamborghini, and so she wrote this down. And
She said, you're testing me.
so then the next sentence was, the next question, this is what, use a sentence with some other word in it. And whatever word she came up with, you put Lamborghini in the sentence. You know, if she said breakfast, you said, I rode my Lamborghini to get breakfast, or whatever it was. And so the next time it was kind of funny when you did it. The third time it seemed to be losing its funniness to this woman who was trying to record these answers. About the fifth or sixth time, she got so frustrated she just stopped doing that. She said, well, I don't think I'm going to ask any more questions like that. And we're sitting on the other side of this wall saying, oh man, have we seen this kind of activity before? But the other thing we were laughing about was, I guess you were a senior in high school, and maybe a junior, I don't know. And
Winter.
it was winter, and it was a bad night out. I think you asked to go out in the car or something.
A lot of snow.
And I said, well, you got to be careful. Yeah, okay. And so you went out in the car, and it seemed you were gone a whole long time. And you came walking back in the house, and you were covered with snow. We said, where the heck were you? And you were all excited. You said, I got the car stuck. You could go around come around to the back of our house through this private drive, and you had this car stuck. You went off the road on this private drive, and you were stuck in the snow. So I grabbed Evan, and the two of us went out there to try and get this car out of the snow. And you had pretty well stuck. And the more I was out there digging snow and trying to get that car out, the madder I got. And I was yelling at you, and oh God, I was furious. We worked like the devil. I guess we worked probably an hour before we finally got that thing out of there.
No, didn't you have to call a tow truck?
Yeah, we got it out. We got it out eventually. And Evan thought it was terrifically funny because we were yelling at you instead of yelling at him. So he thought it was great sport in that. But I know I wasn't a happy camper then.